house, and if any Indian tries to stop me, I'll blast him.
You know, the only thing more pathetic than Indians on TV is Indians watching Indians on TV.
Hey everybody, it's Ian, back again for another episode of Native Film Talk. I hope everyone's having a good time, having a great week. I apologize for the delay on this episode. I had a busy weekend and just didn't make the time, honestly, just full transparency. But here we are, back again for another episode, and today we're going to talk about Wonder Woman, 2017 Wonder Woman. So comic book people who just love DC, this isn't going to be a DC versus Marvel. This isn't going to be a deep dive into comic books. This isn't going to be a conversation about that. This is called Native Film Talk. So it's natives talking about natives in film. I do not have a guest today. It's just going to be me. But I will be talking about Eugene Brave Rock's The Chief, a.k.a. Chief Napi, a.k.a. Napi, a.k.a. The Boss. So let's dive into it. Wonder Woman, 2017, directed by Patty Jenkins. So her previous movies have been Monster. She directed Monster, the Charlize Theron movie, which, I had to see like 4 or 5 times to finally understand, or at least like not. It was a little too art house for me when I first saw it. I didn't fully get it, but great movie. She also directed Wonder Woman 1984, and she's going to direct Wonder Woman 3 when that comes out. And she also is going to direct Star Wars Rogue Squadron, which I'm super excited about for no other reason other than I loved Rogue Squadron when it was on the GameCube, the Nintendo GameCube. Great video game, so I'm excited for that. That's supposed to come out in 2023. I can't believe that's a year. That's like an actual year that's coming up. It's crazy. So I think this episode would be fun to talk about just because, Wonder Woman 84 came out recently. So let's talk about this movie in particular in preparation for that. I know that Chief isn't in that. Eugene Brave Rock did not make it to 1984. He is in a photograph, apparently, from what I hear. The same photograph that's in this movie is also referenced in 1984. So I have not seen that part yet. But initial reactions, this movie's awesome. I love this movie. I love the representation. I just wish, they kept more scenes with Chief in it. There were extended scenes in the Blu-ray and deleted scenes and an epilogue on the Blu-ray that had more scenes about Chief, that talked more about really the character and just more who he is. And I was pretty disappointed that they kind of cut those out and you have to watch the special features to see that. So pretty disappointing, but what we saw on screen, what we were actually given, I'll take it. It was great. This movie's important too because even from the non-native representation standpoint, it gave people hope in DC. Like up to this point, we got like Batman versus Superman. We just didn't have a whole lot of good things. Man of Steel was a high point. I really enjoyed that one, and then it kind of just dropped off with, Justice League and Aquaman. Batman versus Superman. But where the state of DC was, it was not a good place because Marvel was just couldn't stop with the hits. The hits kept coming. They were just the hit makers, one after another. And Wonder Woman came out, and we're like, oh my God, they're putting DC back on the map. This is great. There was a lot of hype around it when we first saw Wonder Woman show up in Batman vs. Superman, The Dawn of Justice. At the very end of the movie, we're like, oh man, Gal Gadot is Wonder Woman. This is crazy. And then the movie came out, and it was much better than I ever anticipated. This movie was like my Iron Man. I went into it with low expectations to no expectations, and I was blown away. And watching it again, it was still pretty good. There's some parts that were like, I could do without that, or it could be a little bit better in certain parts, but overall, I really enjoyed it. So this is like my only time I get to do this. If I had to rank the DC films, full disclosure, haven't seen Wonder Woman 84, so I will still rank it. So this one, Wonder Woman from 2017, top of the list. Easily the best DC movie out there. Number 2 would be Shazam. Number 3, Man of Steel. Then Birds of Prey. And then I'm honestly just going to put Wonder Woman 84 based on what I've heard from everybody. And then Aquaman. Then Justice League. We'll see how the Snyder Cut changes all of that when that comes out later. Maybe it goes up 1 or 2 places. I don't think any higher than that. The Zack Snyder Cut, for those of you that don't know, is supposed to come out later this year. Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice. And then last, and certainly least, Suicide Squad. So yeah, Wonder Woman gave me hope, but I'm still waiting for it to pay off. Unfortunately, though, it really hasn't paid off, but whatever. So I will say that as far as representation goes, Chief Napi, Eugene Brave Rock, he's the only native in this. He's the only native anything in this movie. So there's going to be a lot of non-native talk or about when it comes to the plot. But I'll try to blow through it as much as possible just to give this context for people who haven't seen it recently. It's been a while. It's been a minute. But some fun facts about Eugene Brave Rock. When he auditioned for this movie, he had no idea it was for Wonder Woman. The working title for this movie was Nightingale. He said that the lines that he was given, he had to Google them and found out that it was attached to Chief. And this is the first movie we see him physically on camera, because he technically made his debut in Batman vs. Superman at the very, towards the end of the film, when Batman was looking in Lex Luthor's metahuman files. He comes across a picture of Diana Prince, and he learns that at that point that like Wonder Woman exists, that there's another metahuman out there. And in that picture is after the Battle of No Man's Land, and after they take the town back, when it's Samir, Charlie, Chief, Steve, and Diana, they're all standing there, and they take that black and white image on that Kaleidion camera, that kind of just glass image. So it's pretty badass knowing now that I've seen Wonder Woman. I'm like, hey, there was a freaking Native American in BVS, Batman vs. Superman. It's pretty awesome. All right, let's get into it. Let's go to the cast review. So, first of all, Diana, I'm not going to be real big on this, but hola. That's the only time you'll ever hear me say that, probably. But Diana Gal Gadot, Israeli actor. She's a former Miss Israel. She was Miss Israel at 18. Afterwards, she served the mandatory 2 years in the Israel Defense Forces. Part of the reason why she was selected for really one of her first breakout films was Fast and the Furious, when she was Giselle, if you remember her from Fast and the Furious, and in subsequent movies afterwards, was the director saw, I mean, one, because she, looked the part, but two, of her knowledge of guns and weapons, and because of her military service, they were just like, hey, you'd be a great fit for this. You'd be a great fit for this movie. So they brought her in for that. And then eventually she catapulted into Wonder Woman. And then Steve Trevor, who is Chris Pine. I mostly know him from the Star Trek trilogy as Captain James Kirk. And he's also in another Taylor Sheridan film that I briefly talked about in the Wind River episode. And that was Hell or High Water. Fantastic film with Jeff Bridges and Gil Birmingham. I'm going to review that movie at some point. But man, I just love that movie. That might be sooner rather than later, just because I would love to rewatch that. And then Hippolyta, played by Connie Nelson. She's mostly known for Lucia in Gladiator, Commodus' sister. So that's Joaquin Phoenix's sister in the movie, and kind of like the somewhat love interest. She is the love interest of Russell Crowe, Maximus in the film. She was in Justice League, and she is Diana's mother. And she'll be in she's kind of in the Snyder Cut. She's in Justice League. She's in a few other movies. The DC movies, rather. And Antiope, played by Robin Wright. Depending on your age, she's probably famous for different roles. So for my age group, she's Jenny, aka Jenny. She's Jenny from Forrest Gump to me. I'll never not see her as that. But if you're a little bit older, you might see her as the Princess Bride from The Princess Bride. Or if you're a little bit younger, you might see her as Claire Underwood from The House of Cards. And damn you, Kevin Spacey, that was such a great fucking show. I wish we got to see it end how it was supposed to end. But, beside the point. And then Ludendorff is Danny Houston. Mostly know him from X-Men Origins. He was Stryker. Sir Patrick, a.k.a. who's David Toulis. He's from Harry Potter. Remus Lupin. He debuted in Prisoner of Azkaban and was in the rest of the series. He was the Defense Against the Dark Arts instructor after, so in Prisoner of Azkaban, and he was out through the rest of the Harry Potter series. Samir is Saeed Tagmaki. This is really his biggest role, his biggest role he's ever had. He was other big ones like G.I. Joe, Rise of Cobra. And then Charlie Ewan Bremer, I remember him from Black Hawk Down, but he's mostly known for Train Spotting 1 and 2. And now for the man of the hour. So, another little tiny ass drum roll. The Chief, played by Eugene Brave Rock. He's from the Blood Reserve in southern Alberta, and homie is Blackfoot. This guy. In he's in a lot of things, but this is his biggest role. I mean, he's a stuntman. He has been in Blackstone. He's been in Hell on Wheels. He's been in Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee. This guy's he's been all over the place, but he got this like breakout film, and this really propelled him into do like bigger roles now, and so it's freaking awesome. Fun fact: in Blackstone, in an episode of Blackstone that he's in, he plays a guy named Ian. Just awesome. There's never any Ians in movie or television, and when we finally get one on Blackstone, he's played by another native. I would have been like, as a kid, I'd be like, representation. I wouldn't have processed it that way, but later in life, I would have appreciated that. What's interesting though, when you look at his filmography, he played in a short film called First World: A Blackfoot Story. He plays Napi in that, so technically, this isn't the first movie he's played Napi in. So it's pretty cool to learn that. He's in a recent film that I'm going to add to this list, and it's called Shadow Wolves. It's a cast of like native trackers. It's an action-packed movie, so it just looks like a popcorn movie, but it's got Graham Greene in it, Eugene Brave Rock, Kyle Gordon. Seems like a fun watch, and I'm going to add that to the list and watch that at some point coming up. And also Eugene Brave Rock, his name's Natani in the movie, which is like more like a Navajo name, so it's pretty cool. But what's most cool, I think, about this is Eugene Brave Rock's name. He's probably the most famous native out there, honestly, because of his role, at least to non-natives. Because when you Google all these other actors that I've done, when I YouTube their names, try to find interviews, it's kind of hard. You have to like go down into the depths and these kind of lower view videos to find some like substantive content. But you type in Eugene Brave Rock Wonder Woman, it's just Comic-Con video after Comic-Con video after Comic-Con video. And it's not just clips like how it is. Like when I was trying to do Blood Quantum, it's like Michael Grey Eyes on the red carpet. Here's a 2-second or 2-3 minute video of us asking him questions. Eugene Brave Rock was like, hey, here's Toronto Comic-Con. We sit down with Eugene Brave Rock for 55 minutes. Here's Vancouver Comic-Con. We sit down with him for half an hour. You're just like, Jesus, man. So it's cool that there's that much content around him. And so that's why I say he's the most probably famous right now to this like generation. For older people, obviously, it's like other native actors. But I think in this moment, he is probably the most like world-known native. That's just me. Somebody come at me with a different opinion, but that's my opinion. And then probably, like other people who were in Twilight, I'd say that maybe are up there, but I think he's the most famous just because of the audience that DC has. So let's get into it, the plot review. So the movie opens up in modern times with Diana Prince, Gal Gadot, opening a briefcase at the Louvre in Paris. And the briefcase was delivered by a van stamped with Wayne Enterprises on it, Bruce Wayne. And so in it, she finds the original picture of the group that was at the end of Batman vs. Superman Dawn of Justice. It's the picture of Diana, Steve, Trevor, and Charlie, Samir, and Chief after the Battle of No Man's Land. And with it is a note from Batman, aka Batfleck, that says, with a freaking cool-ass Wayne Enterprises logo stamped on the top of the note, it says, and I quote, "I found the original. Maybe one day you'll tell me your story." So fun fact, it's actually taken, like this shot, that glass picture in that briefcase, it was actually taken by a wet collodion process. It's no joke, like an old process from the 1850s. They had to find some guy that knew how to do this and like ship in this thing. This is like the old, like where the guy gets under the drape, like what they actually used in the movie. Like that's what he had to do in real life. He got under the black drape and freaking like took the camera and took out that glass piece, and it like stains the glass almost. It transposes the image onto this like black piece of glass, and it's pretty freaking cool. So it wasn't digitized in any way or dressed up. Like that's an actual like collodion, wet collodion taken picture. I thought that was a pretty cool thing. But anyway, flash decades later, decades in the past at Themyscira. So Diana's this young girl, and I'll run through this part. Basically, Diana was given to the Amazon Queen by Zeus, and she doesn't know she's a god yet. Hippolyta claims that Diana is a gift from Zeus, and she is, because she's the god killer, but nobody knows, or she doesn't know that yet, and they try to hide that from her. Diana, though, for some reason, has like this gravitation and fascination toward combat. And in the Amazon, it's like an island full of women that are Amazon warriors. They're a bunch of freaking badasses. And she's always trying to like sneak away to watch them train. And Hippolyta is just like the mom. He's just like, I can't have you fighting. You can't be fighting. This is crazy. Like, you're a little girl, do little girl things, you know? And she tries to like scare her into submission by saying like, all right, you want to know what war's like? War's terrifying. War's fucked up. War's not good. So she tells her the story of the god of war, Ares. And basically, like, Zeus made man to be good, but Ares corrupted the human minds to fill them with suspicion and jealousy. And because of that, this like global war erupts between man, and like every man, this like global war erupts, and the gods try to stop Ares. So then there's like a massive human war going on Earth, and then there's a massive god war going on, and then all the gods get killed except for Zeus. So it's Zeus and Ares left, and Zeus does his thing, takes out Ares. And Zeus ends up leaving the god killer for humans as a gift. And we later learn this is Diana, because if it were to ever happen again, humans would need a way to protect themselves. So as a child, Diana always wants to train. And Hippolyta has her sister, which is Jenny, aka Jenny. Robin Wright is Hippolyta's sister. She is the general of this badass army. And in this world, like, the generals are more like the alphas of the group, like they're the badass of the badasses. So she is the most respected fighter, revered fighter, and experienced fighter, and she decides to take Diana under her wing. And I thought this was a cool point to add, which I didn't know jack shit about Wonder Woman before the movie, other than like the outfit and the lasso of truth, and that was about it. And so it was, and like the jokes were made about her invisible vehicle. I think that was it. But it was cool to see this like evolution of her character, because she was trained in a way that a mortal would fight, and she was trained in a way that the greatest mortal humans on Earth would fight, and in a way that's defensive, and you're looking to not get hurt. Whereas I feel like if you're immortal, you're somewhat of you are a god, then you would fight more open and unguarded, and kind of with this like almost disregard for yourself and for your life, because you don't know pain. And so I thought that was pretty cool. So because of that, it all comes out eventually. Like you fight with a god, eventually you're going to find out that she's a god. And that's what happens. You know, she grows up to be an adult, and they have this sparring session. And Robin Wright goes and challenges her. And General Antiope, she challenges her, and eventually it comes out. She lets out this like massive blast because she hits her wrist gauntlets and just levels the place. And Diana's like, what the fuck is going on? And she like just runs away, because they're like, stay away, Diana, take a second, we'll, you know, we make sure Antiope's okay. And she runs away, but then we learn that this Amazon island, as she runs away, is like covered, it's a veil. It's like hidden from the world, so Ares can't find them. And Chris Pine's plane flies through this invisible barrier and crash lands. So then Diana dives in, goes and saves him, pulls him out of the water. We found out Chris Pine, Steve Trevor, is a spy, and he has fled from the German army, and they come in, and then this battle erupts. You know, it's the Germans versus the Amazons. Germans take casualties. The Amazons take casualties because the Germans have guns and the Amazons don't. But in this, Robin Wright, Jenny, she dies. She ends up getting killed for trying to save Diana. And this is like an epic battle scene, though. Like Jenny, I keep saying Jenny. I should need to stop saying that. Antiope is a badass. Robin Wright is a badass in this movie. I wish she lived so I could have seen more of her, because she was a force. But her dying words to Diana were like, go, God killer. And she thinks it's this sword and the lasso of truth that they talked about, and the shield they talk about. Really, it's the sword that they talk about earlier in the movie to like kind of not tell Diana that she's the God killer. But then they interrogate Steve, learn he's a spy, and they're like, okay, you know, you can live now that we know your intentions are good. But then they're like, there's a global war going on. Like, and there's a person named Dr. Morrow, aka Dr. Poison, you know, and what's going on? Like, this sounds like Ares. At least that's Diana's suspicion, that maybe Ares is still alive, and Ares is out there, you know, corrupting the minds of men again. So then they're like, okay, Steve, you can go to our pools and heal yourself. And then this is where Steve's like, I gotta get the hell out of here. He has a conversation with Diana off to the side. They decide to flee the island together because she wants to fight Ares. She has this gravitation to go find Ares and kill him herself. And so they eventually do that, and they have a little bit of a send-off. They have a little bit of a send-off. Her mom, Hippolyta, sees her off, sends her off into the night, tells her, like, my greatest love is also my greatest sorrow, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, they make it to London, and at London, their first order of business is they got to meet Etta Candy, which is which is Steve's secretary. And so they got to get her some clothes so she can blend in. And after they get her some regular clothes, they're cornered by Dr. Maru, actually Ludendorff's people. And this is where like they show like Diana's just kicking ass in the regular world. It's pretty cool to see this. But then they make it to a meeting room. When they finally get to the British intelligence people that Steve was sent on the mission for, he's like, I got to take this book of formulas to Dr. Morrow, because that's why he was being chased to begin with. He stole this book from Dr. Morrow, Dr. Poison, that has all of the formulas, that has their next move, that shows that they're trying to release this chemical gas at the Western Front in this war that could change the tide of the war, because this mustard gas that they're trying to use is different than the regular mustard gas because it's based on hydrogen. And when they have a gas based in hydrogen, it's impervious to gas masks. It can penetrate the gas mask because it has a different particulate rate, essentially, and so that it can go through the filters. And I'm a safety guy, I know that. Because it's anyway. So eventually, they finally take it to them and they're like, this is interesting. I like this information, but we're going to stay the course. We're still going to send our men to the Western Front. And they're like, what? You can't. That's a death trap. If you send our men to the Western Front with the information I just gave you, like, they're going to die. And one of the generals makes a statement of just like, that's what soldiers do, son. And Diana and Steve are like, what the fuck, man? Are you serious? What do you mean that's what they do? Like, soldiers, we gotta protect these people. And so they leave frustrated, but then they decide, like, hey, if these people aren't going to act, we got to find some way to thwart this. Maybe we can stop Dr. Morrow ourselves. And so Diana at this point is thinking that Ludendorff is Ares, that he is the corrupt person. And so Diana's like, that's the Western Front. That's where I need to be going. So take me there. Take me there and we can stop it. We can stop Ares. We can stop Ludendorff. And so Steve's like, okay, I hear you. And because we have no military support, we have no support of our British higher-ups and anybody high in office, like, we have to basically get a team of mercenaries. And I know just the guys. And this is where we get introduced to the group. But I think something cool, real quick. When Diana got pissed about the generals saying, like, well, that's what soldiers do, they die. Diana comes from a warrior tribe, comes from a warrior race of people. And so she's just like, she says something, and I quote, "You would knowingly sacrifice all those lives. Do they mean less than yours? Where I come from, generals don't hide in their offices like cowards. They fight alongside their soldiers. They die with them on the battlefield." So this is a great point about leadership. And I'm in business school right now, and one of the big things that's a recurring theme in business school is to talk about decentralized versus centralized leadership structures, the pros and cons. And in the military, it's basically like obviously top-down leadership, whereas like in innovative industries where it's more like collaborative and they want to be more cutting edge, they have decentralized leadership structures because they believe that's where like good ideas can come from anywhere. And the answer is obviously a blend between the two somewhere, depending on your culture. But I think that's something that really awesome that was explored, is just the disparity of culture between the Amazon warriors and just the British intelligence, kind of like making a mockery of like modern day government, modern day democracy, and how like modern day military structures are so stupid in ways because you have to respect, you can't circumvent the authority, you have to respect authority and this and that, and orders are orders kind of thing. So I thought that was pretty cool that, one, it was directed by a woman. This is Wonder Woman, and she's kind of like, in a way, like smash the patriarchy in a way, but more just like calling bullshit on like some of the structures where it's just like, you're gonna not listen to my ideas because they're not coming from someone that has the same stripes as you do. Like, that's the stupidest thing I ever heard of, and you're willing to put people's lives at risk because of that. Anyway, I digress. So they decide to go get the team. So you have Samir, Charlie, Chief, and Steve, and now Diana. But they don't meet everybody. They go to a bar to meet Samir and Charlie. When they get to the bar, this is where we learn that Samir is a spy like Steve. But the difference between him and Steve, Chris Pine, is he can speak multiple languages. So he throws some charm at Diana because he's like, oh, this is the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. So I'm going to throw some French at her. I'm going to throw some, Spanish at her. I'm going to throw some Chinese, some Mandarin at her. And Diana, we learned that the Amazons can basically speak every language ever known to man. And this is where that's kind of like inserted in there. And this is important because later on, with her interaction with Chief, this is brought up. And then Charlie, he's their marksman. And eventually all four of them leave to go meet up with the last member, Eugene Brave Rock, a.k.a. Chief Napi, the smuggler of the group. He's never called Napi in this by anybody. They just refer to him as Chief. But what I think is cool is, well, I'll get to that interaction. And so as all this is going on, Ludendorff and Dr. Mara, because their book of formulas was stolen by Chris Pine, they're like, how the hell are we going to win this war, man? Like, bro, we got no formulas. We got no way to make this mustard gas, this new hydrogen mustard gas. And this is where we learn about Ares. Like, he's actually this force, this mythical force that, like, does incite violence, does incite hate. And he gives them the formula basically through just casual, like, fate. Pushes these pages on the table in a way that kind of jogs Dr. Mara's memory for her to remember how to make it. And this is important because while Sir Patrick from Harry Potter, well, we learn that he is trying to be the peacekeeper, trying to be the person that's like, hey, we got to sign this armistice. He turns out to be Ares, but this whole time he's trying to be a peacemaker. And so I think that was pretty cool to kind of like watching this again, knowing that he is Ares. It's real interesting to see how his actions, like in the subtlety, you can tell that he's Ares, but you can't see it watching it for the first time because when they had that big reveal, you're like, holy shit. Anyway, so the team comes together. They all eventually get to this campfire in the middle of the night, and they make it to Chief. And Chief is a smuggler. And so he smuggles, like beer and I'm trying to remember what else. Yeah. He smuggles them some beer, some guns, and some books for his group, but also for the people at the Western Front. But what was interesting is when everyone gets there to that campfire, and the camp's already set up, they all know Chief, except for Diana. And he shakes like Steve, Chris Pine's hand. He embraces Samir. But when he sees Diana, he removes his glove. He didn't remove his glove when he shook hands with Steve. He takes his glove off, and he introduces himself in Blackfoot as Napi. And Diana responds just with her name. And she was like, he says, yada, 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 Napi, saying that my name is Napi. And she just says, oh, hello, it's nice to meet you. I'm Diana. And Chief is like, what the hell? Where the hell did you meet this person? Where did you find her? And this was a cool interaction because this is the only language in the entire film that doesn't have subtitles. It's the only time in the film where there is no translation for the language. And I thought that was freaking cool because without a translation from a Blackfoot speaker, we'd have no idea who that person is or what that's all about. And it also shows like Chief's reverence for Diana removing his glove. People really read into this to think that he might have identified her as a god because he's supposed to be a god himself, when really in truth, when you meet someone for the first time, like at least native people, at least my own family, my people, like if you're working outside, take your damn gloves off when you shake someone's hand for the first time, But anyway, there was an Indian Country Today article that had said, basically, here's the translation, and it's translated that he is Napi. And in Blackfoot culture, Napi is a trickster god. So we have like a demigod, a trickster god, but not in the same way it's like a negative thing. He's definitely like a creator in a way where he is a big deal in Blackfoot culture. And this was freaking cool because this means that in a world where we have superheroes, we have Zeus, we have Ares, we also have native gods. Like as a kid, I always wondered too in some of these movies of just like, well, I wonder what my creator's doing. I wonder what other people's creators are doing. Like all these indigenous cultures have these oral stories of creators and gods and people that have somewhat likeness and resemblance to these gods on camera, these fictional gods that they're depicting. And some of these mythic, like Zeus, like Thor, and then others that are completely made up, like the Marvel Universe and the DC Universe superheroes. But you have somebody real, like Napi, and they say, like, hey, we're going to throw him into the DC Universe also. And so it's like, how fucking cool is that? This is like transcending representation into like popular culture, into just like, this is now something that is set in stone of like representation. This is like next level stuff where, yes, you have accurate representation from the sense that like he's not a stereotypical anything, but he adds something to the story to at this level at a freaking multi-million-dollar box office film that like broke records worldwide. And he says like, hi, my name is Napi. And so now you have non-indigenous people wondering like, who's Napi? You have non-indigenous people looking into, even like non-Blackfoot people. Like I had to look into it. I had to get educated on it. You get our story out there. You get people curious. You get people wondering like, what are who are Blackfeet people? Who are these people? Where were they? What's their story? I thought that was so cool, just from something as simple as a small interaction. Unfortunately, though, Chief, he's not in he's not in Wonder Woman 1984. I think what would have been cool is this demigod aspect. It's not added to in the storyline, even though it's cool, even though we know about it. It's not expanded on in this movie. It is a little bit in some of the deleted scenes and like some of the scenes at the very end of the movie that were all cut from the film. But in Wonder Woman 1984, he's not in this. And even though this is World War I in Wonder Woman, this 2017 version, this takes place in World War I. And in 1984, that's... Jesus Christ, Ian. That's like, what, 50, 60 years? I don't remember when World War I was, like 30s? Something like that? So like 50 years goes by. Obviously, Diana is still, she's a demigod. She's a god, so she doesn't age. It would have been cool to see Chief in Wonder Woman 84, so we could have seen him not age at all too, to prove like, hey, he's a god as well. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see that. But anyway, Chief, he's a smuggler. He's got goods for everyone. German beer, British tea, Edgar Rice Burroughs novels, and guns. Everyone has their fun, goes to bed. And in the deleted scenes, we learn that Chief is taking watch. That's why him and Diana are sitting up and everyone else is asleep. But Diana has like some great interest in him just because of who he is. And, he speaks Blackfoot, and I bet Chief's real intrigued too. And in the script, I looked up the script online. There's a lot of like scene setting, really just to give the actors guidance on like what is supposed to be guiding their roles, guiding their words at the time. And so in this scene, Chief really has a lot of respect for Diana, and Diana has a lot of respect for Chief because in the script it says, in the world of men, Chief is the first person that does not that looks her square in the eye. Out of all the men she's met up to this point in this like man's world that's not Themyscira, the Amazon woman's island, Chief is the first person to look her square in the eye and say, hi, my name is. And I thought that was cool, and I wish they kind of expanded on that a little bit more, but I feel like you would have kind of detracted from the movie. But Patty Jenkins also course corrected on some stuff. I mean, even though he is called Chief in this, it was Eugene Brave Rock's call to speak Blackfoot in the movie. It was his call to add Napi into the movie. I thought that was like fucking awesome. Like he didn't need to do that, but they listened to him. That's a good relationship right there. The original script is supposed to have Chief to be this quote-unquote bright-eyed Native American. Instead, he chose to introduce himself as Napi, and I thought that was like freaking cool. And everyone goes to bed, and he's like got the first watch. As they settle in, they have this interaction. So Diana says, so who do you fight for in this war? And Chief's is like stuffing money in his pocket, and he's like, I don't fight. And Diana, you're here for the profit then? And then Chief, nowhere better to be in the war you don't take side in. I have nowhere else. and no side left. The last war took everything from my people. We have nothing left. At least here, I'm free. Who took that from your people? And Chief looks over towards Steve Trevor sleeping and says, his people. Before Diana can ask anything more about that, Charlie wakes up, has flashbacks, and Chief says he sees ghosts. And then the next day, they take off. But I thought that was cool that even that right there validated the Native American experience in the United States and talked about colonialization in a small way that was only peppered in by 2 or 3 lines. To Native people, it's like they have a fucking broken record at this point. But you don't understand. This is a multi-million-dollar film that was seen globally, that grossed over something crazy like $500 million worldwide. And people got to see that, got to see the Native American experience in the United States, in North America, encompassed in just something as simple as who did that to your people, his people, and just looked at white people. And I thought that was cool. I thought that was great. Fuck yeah, I'll take that. And then the next day they make their way to no man's land, and it's a position that's been held by the Germans for years, and they have to go around it. But Diana's like, no, man, I can do this. I can take this. And I feel like it's a little on the nose. No man's land. She's a woman. She's technically not a man. Yada, yada. The writers probably broke their freaking arms, patting themselves on the back on this. Dislocated their shoulders, patting themselves on the back. But anyway, they're like, Diana, it's been over it. They've held this position for a year, and they haven't gained an inch. This is no man's land. And the scriptwriter's like, wink, wink, no man's land? But this is where Wonder Woman makes her debut in the man's world. She's had little interactions before where she kind of flashes, but this is where she takes off her gown, her trench, and she her trench coat. She shows her armor, shows everything. But gosh, this outfit is not practical. It's so damn cold. Everyone's bundled up. It is bone-chilling cold. She can't wear a full bodysuit. I guess it makes sense because she lives on an island and there's no need for winter clothes on an island. But Jesus, people, cover up a little bit. It's cold. Anyway, this great battle ensues. They take the position. Diana kicks ass. The town. And what I liked about all of this, they eventually take the whole town. Blah blah blah. I love this because the group, Samir, Charlie, Chief, and Steve, they're all capable. But Chief is capable. When they get into the trenches, everyone's like, Chief, no one's like, hey, hey, you got any firewater, Chief? They all know him as the smuggler. You need shit, you go to Chief. You want Edgar Rice novels, Edgar Burrow novels, you want some German beer, you want some tea, you go to Chief. And even during the battles, Chief isn't running away. He's not like Adam Beach and Wind Talkers when they're like, get down, damn it, you're a fucking liability. He's not a liability at all. He's Chief is capable. He knows how to wield a gun. He knows how to fight. There's no explaining the world to him because he doesn't understand, because he's just oh God, this world is so big and so fast, and you white people are so advanced. I've never seen these things before, which end does the bullet come out of? We don't have that. He just knows what to do. I thought it was cool. There's no deer in the headlights at all. And that might seem innocuous. That might seem like it doesn't matter, but it matters. In 2017, for that to be depicted that way, that's a fucking win. Anyway, so they keep going. They eventually say hey, there's a gala going on. That's where Ludendorff's going to be. So they go and try to get into the gala. And they're like, how do we get into this gala? They make it to the front gates. And Chief goes and he takes this Rolls Royce vehicle, and he's like, here you guys go. That's kind of one of the last times we see Chief do a whole lot. After that, it's kind of a lot of interactions between Ludendorff, Diana, but it's cool because Chief continues to make contributions to the movie. He steals rides. He does things that people are like, how the hell did he do that? And he is a key piece in this entire operation, and he's not token anything. Frankly, Chief didn't have to be Native American. He could have just been any other race, but they decided to make him Native American, a person who is a great smuggler who happens to be Native American. That's how you do representation. We just exist in the world. We don't have a giant pin over our head that says hi, I'm Native American. We just exist. But based on his costume that was chosen for him, you could piece it together that he's native. None of the stuff that he was wearing was on the nose native, at least like on the nose, like stereotypical in a way. At least my opinion. Someone is welcome to come and give their 2 cents and correct me, or try to convince me otherwise. But I personally didn't see that. So eventually, the hydrogen bomb that they fear, the hydrogen mustard gas, gets deployed at a town nearby after the gala. Diana's pissed because she had a chance to take out Ludendorff at the gala, and she was stopped. And so she's like, "What the hell, man? I had a chance to stop this. This new mustard gas did exactly what we said was gonna happen. I fucking killed everybody." And so she's like, "I need to go kill Ludendorff now. I need to go there today." And she takes off into the night and makes it to this base. And Ludendorff is in this high tower. And she goes and finds him, infiltrates the high tower, faces off, and kills him, thinking he's Ares, using the sword that she thinks is the god killer. And then at this point, she's like, "Okay, I killed Ares. Why is everyone still loading up this plane full of bombs?" And we learn while everyone's like going around, kind of like doing their thing. And Chief, this is where Chief again once proves his worth. As they're investigating earlier in the movie, trying to figure out what's going to happen, trying to figure out more of like, why are they making this hydrogen mustard gas? Where is it going? They learn, and Chief is the one that finds this. He finds a map that shows a line from where they are to London. They're planning to fly a plane full of this hydrogen mustard gas. They're going to plan to fly it to London to basically kill everybody there. So they're like, not only do we have to follow Diana to where she thinks Ares is, we got to freaking stop that plane. We got to make sure it doesn't take off to London. We're going to lose, thousands of lives if we don't stop them. So after Diana kills Ludendorff, she looks over and like, why are those guys still fucking loading up the plane? I thought I killed everybody. I thought that was Ares. He's the god of war. Shouldn't that have ended the war? And at this point, Chris Pine, he's just like, "Diana, I don't know I don't know what is going on right now, but all I know is I gotta stop that plane. You can either come with me or you can stand here in shock. But what if Ares isn't real? What if they're just bad people?" And so he takes off with the group, Chief, Samir, and Charlie, and they try to stop the plane. And this is where we learn that Sir Patrick, aka guy from Harry Potter, he has been Ares this whole time. He appeared to be an ally this entire time in the movie, but he shows himself back in that tower and he's like, "The god killer isn't this sword," and like just disintegrates it. "The god killer's you, but you're so new to this. You're so infant. You have the blinders on. You don't know what's going on. War is inevitable," kind of the conversation. And then it starts this big massive battle. And Diana's getting her ass kicked. Typical battle. She doesn't understand her power. She gets her butt kicked and she gets launched into midair. She learns that every time she finds this new depth of strength, Ares just one-ups her. And so Steve finally makes it to the plane, and as he's running toward the plane, Diana's like fucking launched like Dragon Ball Z status through the air like hundreds of feet and lands right in front of Steve. And Steve talks to her while she's like she has this this moment where she has ringing in her ears. She can't hear anything, so he's like talking to her muffled. Like she can't hear him yet. And gives him his watch, and he like professes his love throughout this entire movie. This is a love story too with Chris Pine and Diana Prince, which I didn't talk about, but yeah. So Steve gets on the plane and by himself. It's a suicide mission. He flies far enough away that he's in the clear from any human person and blows the thing up. And while Diana's losing the battle to Ares, she sees Steve's planes blow up in midair, and she like screams and loses her shit. And now she's fighting for revenge and love, and eventually she finds out how awesome she is, how powerful she truly is. She can levitate, she can fly, she's got all kinds of power, she can redirect energy through her gauntlets, and it's pretty cool. She defeats Ares, It's the final that delivers a final blast to Ares. When the dust clears, you can see its sunrise and blah blah blah. And my wife, so I watched this with my wife when that happened. When she delivers that final blast, my wife's like, "Look, she's facing east." And it was just like, she just said it as like a joke, of course, to be like an like a moment. But anyway, everyone celebrates the end of the war. Since Ares is dead and he was actually the god of war, his death ended the war. The team survived. Charlie, Samir, Chief, everyone made it except for Steve. He made the sacrifice to kill himself to stop that bomb, the plane full of bombs. And yeah. So in the script, this is really the end of the movie, really. Present day, Diana goes back to present day at the Louvre. She sends a message back to Bruce Wayne, thanking him for the photograph and letting her keep a piece of Steve. She's still fighting the good fight, blah, blah, blah. The end. She kind of like jumps off into the sunset. But in the movie, back to World War I times, after this event, after the celebration, Samir, Charlie, and Chief go to a bar and they're like, bro, let's celebrate. And this is what I like this because Chief drinks in this movie. Not on screen in the actual movie, but all the deleted scenes I saw, Chief drinks. And when he drinks, it's like, this is what he does, you know, but not in like that's the only thing he does. Like, he's not a drunken Indian. He just enjoys a drink like everyone else enjoys a drink. I love that. There's another scene too where it proves that he's a demigod when they're walking to no man's land. After the night they spent at the camp when Diana and Chief first meet, and that next day when they're on their way to no man's land, there's a scene when they're walking on the dirt road, and Chief is the tracker. You know, Eugene Brave Rock's up front, and they're all riding they're all walking. Actually, they're all walking, and Eugene Brave Rock's like, hold on, stop. And she's like, why is he up front? What the hell? Like, why is he so special? You know, why isn't he scared? And he like throws, I think like Charlie's getting drunk walking, and she like, he grabs his bottle and throws it in front of him, and like, it explodes a landmine. It's like, that's why, because he's like super awesome. He's a freaking awesome like person. So he has this like almost sixth sense in a way that is explained by the fact that he's a god, but we don't say that. And I'm glad they left that out of the movie because without telling people that he's a god and him just having that like tracker knowledge is kind of like, you know, kind of adding to that stereotype of being a native tracker. So I'm glad they took that part out. But the scene I was talking about at the very end, Chief, Samir, and Charlie, Etta, Steve's secretary, comes and brings them a mission from the British intelligence and is like, hey, you guys are all going to be spies. You guys are all spies, and here's your first mission. And she gives them blueprints of a mother's box, and that's supposed to be their entry into the following films, and obviously it doesn't happen, but I thought that was pretty cool. Anyway, let's get to it. Positives. Chief was competent this entire movie, especially during the fights. At no point was he in over his head. At every single fight in the movie, he never looked lost. He was a contributing member. It was fucking awesome. Outside of that, like, Chief was the shit. He shot guns, he smuggled, he threw a bunch of grenades. He threw sticky grenades against walls to help the main protagonist, like, shoot stuff. Like, he never had to be like, God damn it, Chief, why are you so slow? Damn it, Chief, I wish you were a better warrior. Damn it, Chief, aren't your people warriors? Can't you fight better, you know? Would you shoot better if I gave you a bow and arrow? Better watch out with that fire water there. There was none of that. None of that, you know? But we've seen that in movies countless times. And he's in important shots throughout the movie. There are main shots where, like, Diana is looking at Steve Trevor, Chris Pine, and he's like, you know, what's going to happen? What are we going to do? And Chief is in the background. Like, his face is there. I'm like, that's a freaking native, Eugene Brave Rock. I'm like, this is awesome to see, like, representation. For my kid, whenever he sees this, he gets to watch this, and he's going to have long hair. I hope he decides to keep it, but, you know, when he's later on and he watches this movie, he gets to see, like, hey, son, that's a native person. That's a native man on screen that has long hair. Because there's a lot of presumptions, and Eugene Brave Rock talked about it, him being a native man with long hair that wears braids. He's like, when he was growing up, he got mistaken for a girl a lot. I had to defend who he was. Like, oh, I'm not a girl. My name's Eugene. And people assuming that he's a girl just because he had long hair. And, like, all of the times he gets teased being a person that just has long hair, a boy that has long hair, and kind of gave me a glimpse and insight into some of the things that my son's probably going to face when he gets older. But it's also cool that, like, we can look at a movie like this and be like, hey, he has braids because that's a part of his identity. That's like something that he takes pride in, and that's something that I hope he takes pride in too. Like, I think that's awesome. That's great. This is positive representation. He never looked out of place. It was just awesome. And Chief Napi was supposed to have broken English. Now, this was a rumor, of course, but Eugene Brave Rock, he corrected the writers because he said at this time period, his people would have went through residential schools already, and they wouldn't have had broken English. They would have gone through those schools, and yes, they would have went in most likely speaking their own native language, but they wouldn't have broken English. Like, they were trying to be true to the time, so to them they were like, well, World War One, in the 30s, natives would have had broken English. And Eugene Brave Rock was like, nah, son, you got that wrong. And they were receptive. They listened. You hear him. He doesn't have Indian speak in the movie. He doesn't have broken English. It's awesome. So 2 things for that. Thank you to the film. Thank you to Patty Jenkins for being receptive to that kind of feedback. And thank you to Eugene for standing up. I know plenty of people. It's like fucking me, probably. I would have been like, this is a multi-million-dollar film, Ian. I should not correct people. I am going to zip my lip, and I'm just going to be happy that I'm here. He could have very well done that. I don't want to mess this gig up. I don't want to be the person that seems difficult. I don't want to be labeled as difficult to work with. I don't want to be labeled as like, oh, he complains a lot, but Eugene gently corrected them and said like, hey, here's some facts as to why this is problematic. And they listened. Like, he potentially put his career on, maybe not career, but at least that job on the line by bringing that up. And hats off to the writers and to the director, everyone involved, to like take that feedback and be like, you know what, that's relevant information. That gave him agency and said, yes, that's a perspective that this film needs. Thank you for offering that. So he said something, paid off. Badass. I think one of the most coolest things in this is one of the first movies I've ever seen where Blackfoot is spoken on screen. And Eugene Brave Rock said like that was one of the most important things for him, because you see like Lakota, you see Navajo spoken on camera, but you never see Blackfoot. And for him, he's just like, I wanted that to happen. I wanted to see that there, and he did it. It's awesome. And just, he's a native character in a superhero movies. In a DC, Marvel, we got all these superhero movies being pumped out all the time. There's no natives in these things. Like Adam Beach was Slipknot and Suicide Squad, but that's it, And this one, like, this is like an actual native person in a superhero movie, and it's fucking awesome. He's not a tracker, he's just a badass. He's just an essential cog in the movie. I love it. I have not seen 1984 Wonder Woman. I want to see it. I don't have HBO Max. Theaters, I'm not going to anytime soon. Maybe I'll just get HBO Max just to watch it. But I want to see like what little piece of Chief they have in there, and we'll see what happens. So negatives, why even have a Chief in this? He's a scout, yeah, but I don't know. It's like, why have this? It's kind of weird that just out of nowhere you have a Chief. Like, he's not the Apache Chief from the DC Comics. That's where people thought he was going to go with this character once they found out he was a god. But he's not. He has no reason to be native. They just chose him to be in this, and I'm like, what's the significance there? But regardless, they did it right. I just wonder, like, why, I feel like there's more opportunity to fuck that up than anything, in terms of representation anyway. But he's a demigod. It's awesome. I think that's great. But he's in only this movie. It's negative because he isn't in Wonder Woman 1984. He should have made an appearance to show, like, he's ageless, just like Diana, so that people could see, like, hey, he's a demigod. And why were all his best scenes cut? And there's the Blu-ray, the extended scenes and the epilogue called Edda's Mission. You get to see him doing all his like awesome stuff. You get to see more character development. I'm disappointed that none of that made it. And I'm sure there were other things that were, once they did production, once they're in post-production, that they decided to cut more scenes. And that's why we're watching the Snyder Cut, because people are like, hey, Justice League is probably a much better movie when Zack Snyder was making it, so release that movie. That movie's probably so much better. They probably cut out so much of Zack Snyder's scenes from the movie. So I wonder how many other scenes were cut out from this one. That really just adds character development and depth to Chief. This movie, ultimately it's awesome. I love it, I just wish those scenes would have been added, because they were fun to see, those extended scenes that I was talking about. But if you want to see the epilogue, it's called Edda's Mission. Just YouTube it. It's like a 3-4 minute scene, real quick. 2 to 3 minute, rather, scene that just shows them ending with the blueprints to the mother's box. So, much cooler if they addressed this stuff. So that's pretty much the episode. What'd y'all think of Wonder Woman? Did you like it? I hope you liked it. I really enjoyed it. If you've seen Wonder Woman 1984, let me know what y'all thought. I really want to apologize again for not pushing this one out, but man, just life's been hectic. It's been good. Actually, I'm going to talk just a few minutes about just myself, where this podcast is going to go for the next couple of weeks. I really don't know what I'm going to do for the following movies. I want to do movies that have like less representation than people would assume. I think those are more interesting to me. Like Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee, I think I'm going to have to like build up to that. That's like exhausting to do from like just how much I have to put into it, but just watching a movie like that. You know what I mean? I think I have to like feel up to some of these movies. On Instagram recently, I added like almost like a this or that, just like a fire meter of like, where's this movie at for you all? And, you know, that's why I put movies like Avatar, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, just to get a pulse from where people are, because I'm just kind of in this, not funk right now, but like the idea of having to watch, you know, just a real like native movie after native movie is kind of exhausting. Like, I want to watch Back to the Future 3. I haven't seen that in a while. I want to look at the native representation. I want to watch The Quick and the Dead, you know? Yeah, so like honestly, okay, full disclosure, I'm going to talk about Hostels for a minute. Hostels bored me to death. To fucking death. If you love that movie, you know, like to each their own. I'll just say that. Like, it'd be hard to convince me that Hostels is an entertaining movie. And maybe if I watch it again, it's different. Like, maybe it's because I built it up in my mind, because it had Wes Studi, it had Christian Bale, it had Rosamund Pike in it. I thought, like, oh man, this movie's going to be awesome. It's got Adam Beach in it. And I watched it, and it was just so slow. It was too slow for me. Maybe I wasn't in the right mindset. I wasn't in my right mind going into it. I'll watch it again when I do the episode, but for some reason, that really, like, buzz-killed for me. So I'm trying to, like, go back, be a little more lighthearted, and just watch some movies that are different, you know? Shit, I'll even do Mystery Men and just talk about it, because Wes Studi's in there. Mystery Men, Green Mile, you know? I'm watching the Twilight Saga right now with my wife. She's going to come on and do an episode with me. It'll be fun. All right, everybody. Well, I hope everyone enjoyed the episode, and y'all have a good week. Talk to you later.